And step one is to print out your site plan and then make a really big copy of it like this, that as you'll see has all those nice squares on that you can use to work out where you're going to put everybody. So step two, print a black and white version of your blown up grid that you can use to plot all your tent sizes on. Okay, so then you need to mark out using the grid that's printed on the maps how big each of your tents is. So just use this as a guide. We're not actually going to put them in these places. So this tent is 7.8 meters. 7.8 meters long. It's 3.8 wide. 1, 2, 3.8. And then work on the assumption that this is a sleeping tent, so we need to leave a 2 meter gap between each tent. So if you draw a 1 meter box around it, then when we butt one up against the other, we've got our 2 meter gap. So what I'm going to draw now, this full shape is the shape that I'm going to cut out to represent the amount of floor space I need. Now while you're doing this, it's going to get a bit panicky because you'll find that you've got much bigger tents than you expected, but it all works in the long run, trust me. So there's an example. This space in the middle is my tent, and then this bit around the border is my 1 meter fire gap, so it's half of the total gap that I'm going to need. So if you do that for all of your tents, then in a few minutes you'll be able to cut these pieces out and start playing chess with them to work out where they're going to fit. Okay, so now we're going to do a cooking tent, so we need to leave a bigger border around a cooking tent because you need to leave 3 meters around anything that's for cooking in, and that includes your caravans or motorhomes. So our cook tent is 8 meters squared, so this is my 8 meter square. Don't worry about where you're drawing it for the moment, apart from leaving enough space to have a fire break. We're going to cut all these out later on. So here's my 8 meter square, and then I need a 3 meter gap. Now if we're leaving 1 meter around our tents anyway, we just need to draw a 2 meter border around a cooking tent. And we know that if we sit that next to any other tent, then we will have enough space to have a 3 meter fire break. So that box is the whole shape that I'm going to cut out, and this is the fire break around it. Okay, so then cut out all your tent shapes, including the fire breaks. Obviously, if you're doing this at home, you should use round-ended scissors or get an adult to help you. So then, having marked out all of our tent shapes, we can start to position them on here. So the light grey border allows for your 1.5 meter gap to a border, so long as nothing goes over that, then you're okay. In this particular situation, let's work in this space here. So the first premise is your cooking tent, if you're going to have lighting in it, needs to be in the corner where the electrical symbol is. So that would put this tent into here. So as you can see, I've overlapped my fire break over the grey line. So there's my cooking tent in, and then quite literally you need to start playing around with some tents, allowing for all of the various different characteristics and personalities. But as an example, this one would just about fit into that gap. Maybe that's slightly too big, so let's use this one here. And we know that if we use that as an example, we've now got a 3 meter gap between this tent and somewhere where we're cooking, and we haven't overlapped the border. Something that is useful to bear in mind is with caravans or anything that involves a 3 meter gap, get it in the corners of your site, because then you get your fire break over there, you're not wasting space in your allocation. Okay, so then you've got all of your tents marked out. You can check all your fire breaks are the right sizes, you can check your logics right for where everyone is. So then all you have to do is tidy everything up, and there you go, there's your plan. When you turn up, everything's neat and tidy. Just bear in mind this is for 2 churches that are camping together, which is why we've crossed that line. You need to stay in your own box. And then one last thing you can do to help you is to make yourself a measuring device before you come. So if you get an old tent peg, tie a string to it, work yourself along. The first distance you're going to need is to know how far your gaps are. So you need 1.5 meters to an edge. So this tag is 1.5 meters from this peg. If you keep working along, the next thing you need is a 2 meter gap. So 0.5 meter from your 1.5 meter tag, a 2 meter tag. That's canvas to canvas distance from the peg to this tag. And then finally, you want to leave another meter for this one. This is your 3 meter tag for your fire break around anything that involves cooking or has gas on, so caravans and big tents. So bring this along, and if there's any difficulty, put your peg in, run your string out, and you'll know exactly where the edge of your tent needs to be. That's the gap to a border, that's the gap to a tent, and this is the gap to a cooking tent. Have a good week.